Hey, Harpslingers, welcome to the Harpslinger Podcast, where each and every week we hang out with the greatest harmonica players in the music business. If you're watching this on the Hohner Music Facebook page, as I always say, go down, push the share button, share it to your own profile, help us spread the word. If you're watching this on the Harpslinger YouTube channel, sort of the same thing. Subscribe button, hit ding the bell, as they say, and that way we can keep you up to speed on the fresh new content that we have coming out. If you haven't already checked out the back catalog, I urge you to do that. Some incredible harmonica players that we all know and love that I've been able to interview over the last few weeks and months. So do check that out. All right, let's do this, everybody. I have a great guest on the line today, and my next guest hails from Boston, Massachusetts, attended Berkeley College of Music. He's one of the great young harpslingers on the scene, and he plays both chromatic and diatonic harmonica. He's also a Hohner Music endorsee. Most recently, he's been on tour with multi-platinum selling artist Sting, one of my favorites. Here he is, everybody. Shane Sager. How you doing, Shane?
Very good, man. It's a real pleasure to be here with you.
Oh, well, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. I'm really grateful that you agreed to do it, man. Man, a lot to talk about. You were from Massachusetts, as I said in your introduction, right? You're in Boston at the moment?
Yeah, born and raised in Boston. Both of my parents are from Boston originally. They actually both grew up in a town called Malden, which is about 30 minutes from downtown. And they were high school sweethearts,
Okay.
and moved into downtown right kind of when my sister and I were born. And I've been here pretty much my whole life.
Right on, right on. Are you from a musical family by any chance?
No.
No.
um, my dad would say that he was a drummer, and yes, he was in like him. And actually, funny enough, one of the guys that I was in my like first real band with, my his dad was in a band with my dad, like when they were really young, and my dad was a drummer. But no one in my family was really musical at all. Mom didn't play, my sister didn't play. Um, so it was really, I was kind of I always say to my grandmother, I'm like, were there any like long lost relatives that, that maybe like when they were still in like Lithuania they played or,
Yeah.
but no, the answer is no.
Okay. Wow. Well, so how did you stumble onto the harmonica?
So let's see, I think I was about 9 years old. And I was on a flight back from, I think it was like, I don't know, somewhere in the States, and I was with my mom and my sister. And they were showing a movie on the plane, and it was School of Rock.
Okay.
And I thought that the guy playing the drums was like the coolest person ever. So I actually, when I got home, I begged my mom for a drum kit, and that ended up being my first instrument
Okay.
was drums. And I started playing drums when I was 9. I started harmonica when I was about 13. Um, the thing that led to me playing the harmonica was actually kind of a beautiful accident. I was also playing soccer. I was in, I guess it was sophomore year of high school.
Hmm?
I was playing soccer, like varsity soccer, and I was a goalie. And I was also playing drums in the school band. And uh, I went out one day, like we were in a game. I went out to go break up a play, and I ended up busting my finger really bad, um, and had to have surgery. And it was this
Wow.
whole thing. But anyway, hand was in a cast for like 6 months, and couldn't play drums. So I asked my music teacher at the time, like, what else can I do besides that? And he had the idea to play harmonica because it only required one hand.
Okay.
And yeah, at the even like from the beginning, I really loved it, and I'd always like there's everyone has like a harmonica that's just floating around their house,
Yeah.
like and I think it was like one of those old like Hohner standbys, and I remember just like breathing in and out into it, and it like just thinking like it was so cool. But that's like my first kind of that was what got me started was uh, pain.
Right. Right. Hey, that's all right. That's okay. Whatever gets you there. Well, so you started on the 10-hole diatonic, I'm assuming, right?
Yes, I started on diatonic. I didn't really know about anything in terms of blues, in terms of harmonica. Uh, like the kind of music that I was listening to at the time was like Black Sabbath and like AC/DC and like Almond Brothers and like all kinds of like a lot of different, a wide variety, but never really any like, I wasn't listening to like, Muddy Waters at the time or anything like that. But when I started playing harmonica, my music teacher, the one who had recommended me the harmonica, he showed me a recording by William Clark called, which I'm sure all harmonica players know, called "Blowing the Family Jewels." And after I heard that, that was when I was totally and utterly. That was the moment for me. That was, I want to do this.
Your high school band teacher was really cool, man.
My high school band teacher was the coolest. He's super cool, and like he always put up with us, and we were like the worst kids to be in a band with. We would just like always be playing, and like we would play over time, and but he loved us, and it was a great, like, that group of guys that I played with really shaped my kind of my musical taste from that point on. So we kind of as a group got into Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf and Willie Dixon and all those guys.
Right on. What kind of band was this? This wasn't your marching band or your concert band? This was like an actual, like a rock band? What was it?
This was like it was basically like, it was a band. It was like we played everything from like Red Hot Chili Peppers to, we like sat in with the gospel choirs. We were really kind of jacks of all trades.
Okay.
And like we played, like we had one show where we just did like covered all John Mayer music.
Wow. Okay.
Like all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
But my first like official band, like the one outside of school that I had mentioned before, that was more along the lines of like an Almond Brothers, Widespread Panic kind of like jam band, and I was playing drums and harmonica in it.
Okay. Drums and harmonica at the same time. Did you put the rack? Wow. Have you ever heard of I believe it's maybe the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band?
Yeah, I think so.
Their drummer, his name escapes me at the moment, although I know it. He does the same thing, and he's great. It's great.
Yeah. And this was like still like in my formative years when I was just like doing a lot of that, like those like kind of long, like exaggerated, like Bob Dylan like breaths.
Yeah.
And and doing that, I could still keep the beat really well. And yeah, and then over the course of time, as I got like kind of into like my like 16, 17, 18 years old, I started to move away more from the drums and get really serious about the harmonica. And it was in this time that I also like started playing chromatic, and my introduction to chromatic was also through William Clark, Paul DeLay, Gary Primich, all those kind of those like newer school of blues guys.
Right. What do you have a preference, or you love both sides? You love I'm sure you love them both, but do you have a preference, chromatic or diatonic?
I would say that it just depends. I really like the chordal quality of the diatonic. I like I love, like, I just love that sound of like that kind of wailing on the 4-drop bend and the octaves. Like I love all of that about the diatonic. And the chromatic I just love because it sounds so different. Like when you put it into like anything, like if you put it into jazz, if you put it into blues or whatever, it just has this like very unique tonal quality that it's not better or worse, it's just different.
Sure, absolutely. So at what point did you decide, I'm going to make this my life? I'm going to go to Berkeley, which is where you went to school, right? Berkeley?
Yeah, so I grew up like, pretty much like Berkeley is, I don't know, 10 blocks away from the house that I grew up in.
Right.
And I would always like when I was in high school, I would take the train to and from school, and Berkeley was on the train, the Green Line, it's called in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
And I always had this kind of image in my head of going there to study music, also because I just know so many of the great players that have come out of there.
Right.
So I was pretty well decided on that, like when I was still like a sophomore in high school. I knew that music was going to be my life. I just didn't know in what context it was going to be.
Right.
But after I graduated, graduated high school, I went off to Berkeley, and it's probably the like easiest commute ever of someone who was going to college.
You could walk to college, right?
Yeah. And I like had like a little apartment that was near Berkeley, and it was, I went to Berkeley as a drummer like that because they didn't have a harmonica program. They
Uh-huh.
don't like it's not that it's not allowed. It's just it's not like a principal instrument choice.
Uh-huh.
So I was at Berkeley, and the more I networked, because that's the big thing at Berkeley is it's great to do really well at Berkeley, but the real reason that everyone goes is to network and to get into bands with people, and you know yeah, it's really like a very big networking school.
Makes
But
sense.
what I found was the more work I was getting was for harmonica. Like it was much more for play with this singer songwriter, like play diatonic for this, or play this like Stevie Wonder style chromatic for this person. And
Mhm.
so I kind of saw a pattern evolving that that harmonica drums were still very important to me, but I thought that harmonica was more and more becoming my that's my life now.
Yeah, right.
um, so around like kind of the middle of the second year, I had fully made the choice that like harmonica, I'm going to play harmonica. That's going to be the rest of my life. And went to to talk to someone about transferring to a principal instrument of harmonica, and they said you can't do that because it's not like in the curriculum. It's not a principal instrument. So I took that as kind of a okay. So I can stay here and play the drums and probably do very well, or I can do what I really want to do, which is harmonica, and I would have to leave Berkeley.
Right.
So that was what I ended up doing. Was I made this conscious choice of there's a lot to learn out there still with harmonica, and staying here is not really going to further me along that process.
Wow, that's a big decision to make. And you know what? On top of that, you must be you're a real drummer. You're not just a guy who played in a high school band, on drums. You're an actual. I mean, yeah. And
Yeah, I worshipped for my whole life. I worship at the feet of like John Bonham and Neil Peart, and all those guys. That was a huge part of my musical life is in rhythm and in drums.
right.
Yeah, so
And
I
I'm sure
was
that helps you with your harmonica playing too.
yeah. The downside is like when I started getting like so drummers like infamously don't have very much formative teaching in like melody or harmony.
Uh huh.
So like when I got to Berkeley, like it was like, at Berkeley they make you like learn obviously melody and harmony no matter what instrument you play. So all the drummers are kind of behind the eight ball. But yeah, drums still a huge part of my life. Still love listening to great drummers, and guys like Tony Williams and Clyde Stubblefield, all drummers that definitely still influence me.
So you're self. I guess you're self taught on chromatic and diatonic, then, right?
Yeah, so actually when I was younger, when I first started kind of searching out like how do I actually play this thing, I went to, as a lot of my peers did, a lot of these kind of younger guys who are on the scene right now, we kind of took to the internet. We went to YouTube, and my first three teachers really on the diatonic were, as a lot of these guys, Ronnie Shellist, Adam Gusso, and Jason Ricci.
Mm-hmm.
And from those videos, that's a whole plethora of curriculum for people to study like for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
But so I studied a lot with that, and Ronnie is a teacher of mine to this day and a great friend of mine. And but I did have some teachers in Boston. There's really great harmonica players that are in this scene. Like Annie Raines is fantastic. She's a
Right.
teacher of mine. Mike Turk, who's kind of a lesser known guy, who around the time that Howard Levy was doing the overblowing technique, Mike Turk was also one of those early guys. He's also a fantastic jazz chromatic player.
Mm-hmm.
So he was the one who really taught me how to play chromatic
Is
outside of the third position stuff.
okay. Right on. Is Magic Dick a Boston guy?
Yeah, he is.
So yeah, I mean, there's a history.
Jerry Portnoy lives, I think, like kind of more like northern Massachusetts.
Okay, yeah, I had Jerry on the show. What a wonderful human being that guy is! Wow, and what a amazing history with the harmonica. Uh,
Mm.
just impressive. Yeah. So did you when growing up did you hear harmonica players occasionally, or was that you were sort of just opened your eyes were opened when your band teacher said, "Here, this is what you need."
Yeah, and it's interesting because after that, me and this band that I was with outside of high school started playing as like 15 and 16-year olds in like bars, and like we would have our parents come with us, and
Right.
like we would play at the all these like great blues bars in Boston, and we would hang out after the shows, like we would get dinner and we would hear the bands go up. So I did get to hear a little like of live harmonica, like I saw Annie. I got to see James Cotton when I was
Nice.
uh, 17, I think.
Yeah.
That was also a very big
Oh,
kind of eye-opening moment for me.
yeah.
But I didn't really, all the harmonica that I was hearing or seeing was all on YouTube. it was it
Okay.
was
Thank
it was
God for YouTube, right?
say again.
Thank God for YouTube, actually.
Thank God for YouTube.
Yeah.
That's what my dad always says to me. um yeah, but like it was listening to these players, especially players who made like a feature of the chromatic, which was my big interest. Like I love Little Walter and I love Big Walter, Sonny Boy, all those guys I love. Um, but to me, the thing that really like touches me in terms of blues music is the guys who play chromatic.
hmm
So like the Paul DeLays and the William Clarks and the Rod Piazzas. Um, so hearing that, like spending a lot of time listening to like guys play third position and first position, and and then the cherry on top of all those harmonica players is Stevie Wonder,
Yeah.
and and you know on the other side of me listening to Black Sabbath and AC/DC, my sister comes when I'm really young and gives me like CDs of Sam Cooke and Ray Charles and Stevie Wonder, all kind of great Motown stuff. So it's this big mishmash of stuff. It wasn't like just strictly blues, and it wasn't just strictly jazz. It was a big variety of things.
Sweet. Do you still play? And I know you've been on the road with some major acts, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But do you still play with any of your local friends in the Boston area?
Um, every now and again, I had those guys that were in that band I haven't really seen in a long time. Like they get married and they
Sure.
kind of move out of state, but a couple of like the first 2 years that I was in college, we were definitely still playing together a good amount. And yeah, I still keep in touch with them. Definitely miss them.
That's fantastic. Well, tell me, I'm dying to know. I'm a big Sting fan, as I think almost everyone is. Just an amazing artist, great songwriter, great vocalist. How did the connection to Sting happen for you?
So we had actually like I should preface this a little bit. My family are like, if you look us up online, our family has had a pretty close relationship with Sting's family, and
Hmm.
it goes back to about 2000. So my family also does this thing that's kind of separate from my music life, which is philanthropy.
Uh-huh.
Um, my dad, my sister, my mom, and I spent a lot of the last 20 years, like basically like whenever my sister and I weren't in school, we would travel and set up these kind of, like philanthropic ventures in third world countries.
Wow.
So like Nepal, Rwanda, Afghanistan,
hmm
all these, when at a very young age, we were doing this. We were working in like the favelas in Brazil. And it's all this kind of helping people to help themselves thing.
Uh-huh.
um, so we've been doing that for the last 20 years, but in 2000, like kind of right as we were getting started, um, by kind of just happenstance, we had met Sting at one of these like kind of save the rainforest things.
Yeah.
um, and from there we kind of had this, like, he really liked my dad, and like my dad's the big person in the foundation that we run, this philanthropic foundation. So we had kept in touch for a long time, and his son, Sting's son, is a good friend of mine. But so the connection, the reason that I am playing is, what was it? In 2015, my mom and my dad were having like this charity event in Boston,
Right.
and it was for this fund called the Lenny Zakem Fund, which works in inner city Boston. And Sting came to like do as kind of like a fundraising kind of concert.
Okay.
So he asked me if I wanted to play on these two songs, which were Fields of Gold and Every Breath You Take. And I was like, yeah, sure. But he asked me to play Chromatic, right. Which at that point I was good at Chromatic, but like good in like in the William Clark vein.
Right. Okay. Right. I feel you.
Not in this like kind of nuanced, sophisticated way.
Yeah.
So I had sought out this teacher, Mike Turk, and we basically did like 3 months of a month of very intensive prep, like to get ready for these two songs. And we did, and I did the gig, and it was great. It was a great night, and it's kind of like, he said I did a good job.
Yeah.
Which, to me at the time, I was like, oh my God, that's the greatest thing that's ever happened.
Yeah, totally.
And then like a year went by, and he called me again for another gig. Only this time it was with a week's notice, and it was at Carnegie Hall.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I remember getting the call, and like I was at my friend's place, and my heart was just like, and this time it was on Diatonic, which was cool. It kind of, broke up that always playing Chromatic thing, and played. And again, good job.
Do you remember what songs were you were playing Diatonic on?
Yeah, so he had just written a song on his new album at the time that was called "Empty Chair," which was about Jim Foley, who had been killed by ISIS.
Okay.
But it's like this if you haven't heard it, it's just this wonderful, like very deep song that's all acoustic, and it's usually just him and his acoustic guitar. But he asked me to kind of, throw those kind of like Mickey Raphael like colorings,
yeah,
which I love.
Yeah, me too.
Then another like 2 years went by, and during this 2 years, I'm gigging. I'm still trying to get better and better and better. And then the next time he called me was for this New Year's Eve gig in Times Square, which ended up being in front of like a lot of like several millions of people.
Seen that clip actually. Yeah, that's great. And you were great, by the way. And you could tell he was really digging what you were doing.
Yeah, and like, could you see my hands shaking?
No, nobody sees that stuff. You know what I mean? We just, yeah, it was really fantastic though. But I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, I mean, so what was funny about that gig is the month before, me and my family were in India. We were, we have this program that we do with the Dalai Lama that teaches Western science to Tibetan monks.
Mm-hmm.
And we were at one of these monasteries at one of these science workshops. So I'm like sitting in the monastery, or like sitting in the courtyard of the monastery with my Chromatic, just like trying to learn how to play this song Brand New Day.
Yeah.
And that was really cool. Like that whole month, that like prep for that show was really, really cool. And that's one of those songs that like everyone knows. Mm-hmm. And like it has such especially like Stevie's harmonica on it, is like so distinctive. And like I remember like Sting said to me one time, he was telling me the story about that song, and he was like, yeah, like Stevie just got it in one take, so no pressure.
I'm sure he did. That's incredible.
But anyway, go to New York, play the show. It was like the most nervous I'd ever been in my entire life, and we did it, and it was great. And then a couple months passed. I remember directly after that, I actually went to Pennsylvania, and I was in like rehearsals with a friend of mine's band, and we went down to the International Blues Challenge at the end of that month. And that was a whole other roller coaster of like being down there. And we actually ended up placing like ninth in the competition, which was really cool.
That's fantastic. Where was that competition? Do you remember?
In Memphis, at the
Okay.
yeah, and yeah, that was a whole kind of
Sure.
thing of all nerves and jitters.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then like 2 months after that, I think in March of 2019, I got the official offer for this My Songs tour for the summer tour. And my role, like originally when I was signed on, I was meant to only really play like 4 or 5 songs, like the ones that everyone knows, like Shape of My Heart and If I Ever Lose My Faith in You, Brand New Day. But there were also these other songs that were famously done by saxophone players, by like guys like Branford Marsalis.
Yeah.
And so like If You Love Somebody, Set Them Free, or Englishman in New York,
Yep.
or these very famous things that everyone knows them as being on saxophone. And then you have me with a chromatic.
I mean, it makes sense to me, though. I mean, everybody that you talk to, right? It's they want to liken the saxophone to the chromatic harmonica. It seems like they're so similar, right?
Yeah, especially the tone of the like I was really stoked to play on Englishman in New York, just because that first note, that like great soprano saxophone sound, I think that really sounds really good on the chromatic. So yeah, and then after I got that, I went back into the woodshed and got ready for the tour. And we went on the tour the summer before last summer, and we played in something like almost 40 countries in like 3 months. And then after that, and then after that, we had a break.
Right. Sure. Yeah. So I was going to ask you what the audition process was like for this, but the audition process was going on and you didn't even know it. You were just, doing these little side gigs for him, and he's probably sitting back there thinking, I got to get Shane on the road. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So
That's how I always kind of think about the New Year's gig. Is I was like, that was my audition that was live to the whole world.
yeah,
I just didn't know it at the time. But yeah, I mean, the audition, like when I think of the audition, it was like our first gig where we just like ran through all the songs. Like this is my first time meeting the whole band, first time like actually like playing on a stage like that big.
yeah.
And that was really my kind of auditions / like this is where you're going to play, this is where you're not going to play kind of thing.
Yeah. So was there a rehearsal process for this tour that you were involved in, or did you just kind of get thrown into this is where you play and this is where you stand? And
well, I mean, I kind of knew at the time like where like what my place was. I didn't know how it was going to change, but I knew what my kind of role was, because I'd seen him have featured soloists before. Like he had this great accordion player who was touring with him, who's also a Hohner endorsee, Percy, I think his name is. But I had gotten to see him live and kind of seen how he was showcased. So I was thinking in my head, like, okay, like that's kind of the role that I occupy now.
yeah,
but in terms of the rehearsal process, it was really like we played for like 2 weeks, and then we all went to London, and that was kind of where at this time he was also doing his tour with Shaggy, because they were promoting their 44876 album. So we were in rehearsals with Shaggy, which was really cool.
cool. I love Shaggy too, by the way.
Man, he is
like that in real life.
He is the coolest guy ever. like so like knows a little bit about like everything. Like, well, he's just like a really good guy. Like, and I was very anxious to meet him, but man, he's just, everyone in that band is just so great. And like especially now during COVID, like we all talk about all the time how much we miss each other, and it's just I definitely miss those guys a lot.
Yeah. Any plans to get back out with Sting once the COVID thing sort of
I
opens?
think I think right now the plan is sometime like late, like in the winter of this coming year,
Huh?
like after, yeah, like in the winter of this next year. But definitely, definitely not anything like in the next 4 or 5 months.
Right. Right. I feel you. So, you 30 or 40 countries. That's a lot. Where were some of your favorite spots? I mean,
Um,
because you've played Central. I mean, you played Madison Square Garden, not Madison Square Garden, but you played Times Square. You've played Carnegie Hall. By this point, you've gone to Berkeley. You've done a few things. So maybe it wasn't easy to thrill you, but I'm sure playing some of those stages
oh yeah,
with Sting,
but
mind
I,
blowing.
like I never think about like the place, like I do, but like I always think about the show.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like if there were special things that stood out to me about the show.
Yeah.
Um, I would say like my favorite shows. One of them was in Bratislava in Slovakia.
Okay.
That was like it, you know this too. Like there's like this energy that you get off of the crowd that like the more they get into it, the more you get into it, and it's just this beautiful kind of myriad of feelings.
Yeah.
Um, and that night was really special. Like that we just had something with this crowd that they never stopped cheering. They were always going. They were always into it, and that just really like that like amps us up. Like we want to play really really great. So and Bratislava is like also really just fun place to go walk around for a day.
I'm sure.
I would say Bratislava, Budapest was really really cool because I'd never been there. It was a lot of these kind of countries that I never would have thought that I would get to, like Slovenia was really fun and Estonia was really fun.
Yeah.
But like my favorite show of the tour was definitely that show in Bratislava.
Okay.
I mean, we had a show that we played in the Netherlands for like 100,000 people.
Wow.
but like me and some of the guys in the band didn't know that it was for 100,000 people. So like we were like walking around all day. We walk into the backstage area and we look out at the crowd and we're like, oh my god.
This is
um,
stuck. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Um,
Wow.
but yeah, like I always kind of because you don't really get a ton of time like when you're on tour, like especially when you're doing that many countries. Like really, it's like you get there, like get off the plane, you sound check, you stay at the venue, you play the show, you go back to the hotel. Maybe you have one day off, like that you can go explore, and then the next day you leave to do the same thing again,
Yeah.
unless you have to, which we did many times, have to get on the plane the next, morning and go to the next spot.
Right. Right.
So
Well,
there's not really like a ton of time to explore.
yeah. Yeah. I know. Yeah. The touring that I've done, it's like you get to a place you've never been before, and you're just like the energy you feel like even when you're exhausted, you're like I got to get out and walk around this town and feel it. Feel what it's like to be here. Speaking of feeling things, nerves. Did you ever have any nerves? I mean, this is a big gig, right?
Yeah, of course.
How did
Like
you handle?
always, if you're not nervous before you play, I tell this to like anyone I'm teaching harmonica to. If you're nervous, that means you care.
That's right.
And if you care, you're obviously going to get a lot more out of the experience. So like I never really agree with people who say they aren't nervous because I think if you're not nervous, you're not really like feeling it. So I always get nervous. And every time that I'm nervous, I'm excited that I'm nervous. But
That's a great attitude to have. Actually, that's something good to share with people because
yeah,
we can
that
let those overcome us and keep us from our dreams and realizing the things that we want to accomplish. Right.
yeah, and I think like people who don't feel nervous, there's also this idea that like they've learned everything or like they've done everything,
Hmm.
which that's one thing I've learned about harmonica, especially during the quarantine and during COVID, is there's so much you can learn. There's so much more you can experience. There's it's endless. And that's part of the reason I love the harmonica is you can never stop exploring. You can never stop learning. There's, you know, hundreds of different types of players.
Hmm.
And but in terms of like getting nervous, I love getting nervous.
Oh, that's great. Well, that's going to play well for you in your future. That's for sure. A lot of great things I'm sure are going to be coming down the pipe for you.
I will say in terms of being nervous, like so as the tour progressed, especially the summer tour, I started with those like 5 or 6 songs, but as the tour progressed, there were more and more spots that I saw that I could kind of incorporate a little bit of harmonica,
Mhm.
not a lot, just like a little bit. So I started playing on 5 songs. Towards the end of the tour, I was playing on like 12.
Wow.
So, um, but like sometimes like you would sound check and then he would like say like, do X, Y, and Z tonight, and you don't have any time to prepare X, Y, and Z.
Right.
So like those days I would be very nervous,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
but like there's no such thing as like a wrong note, or it's all a learning experience. It's
mhm.
all, you can always learn from, even if you mess up.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, so what was your stage rig like for that show? You're playing both diatonic and chromatic, I'm assuming, right? So,
Mhm.
did you have a sort of a separate setup for each, or what do you do when you're playing those?
So in terms of the actual songs, there was no really like amplified like blues
Right.
like Paul Butterfield esque
Right.
sound that I was after, because a lot of the stuff that I was after was this kind of clean,
Mm-hmm.
Stevie Wonder like tone.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my really good friend Greg Human made me this mic a couple years ago. It's
Yeah.
just a Shure 57 cut in half, and I go through the PA. That's my whole rig.
Man, I hear a lot of guys saying that, that that's their preference, and I get it. It makes a lot of sense. Yeah,
Yeah,
especially for that gig, right?
yeah, and like I've never been like a huge, even like when I was like deep into blues harmonica, I was never really a huge gear guy. Like even now, like when I play a blues gig, like yeah, I have a bullet mic that I do bring, but most of the time I just like to play into the PA. I just like I like the kind of unamplified sound of blues harmonica, like that like Sonny Boy Williamson sound.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Well, I've also loved watching. You spoke about the pandemic. Uh, all these videos you've been putting out on your social networking and stuff. It's really inspiring. Really great stuff. And
Thank you.
actually, that's how I found you. I'm like, who is this guy? I really like this guy. He seems really cool. Also hikes and stuff. He's an outdoors guy. You know,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
cool. You look
I
well. This social networking thing.
so I kind of came into COVID a little nervous about what I was gonna do next. Like it kind of seemed like there was no like for the time being there was no kind of next step. Like my whole life, pretty much for my whole life, has been like on the road.
Hmm.
Um, so to be stationary was a very new thing for me. Um, so I treated it like, kind of this 10,000 hour principle, that this, when I was young, like I think I didn't really know how to like practice properly. And for like all beginners in any instrument, but especially harmonica, knowing how to practice properly is something that I think learned how to do this during the quarantine. But as I started exploring more outside of the realm that I'm comfortable with. Like I started playing like reggae, and I started playing like like to these jam band songs, and
Yeah.
started playing like you know Arabic music, like all kinds of like weird things, just to try it, because I'm in my home. No one else is really listening.
Yeah.
Um, and I had been like seeing like more and more, like a lot of people online were starting to put out videos of them playing, because again, there's not a ton to do.
Right.
And I think one day just like posted something of me doing like a big Walter Horton tribute or something,
Mm.
on one of these harmonica Facebook groups, and people liked it.
Yeah.
and that was really cool. I know a decent amount of people in the harmonica community, but not as many as I'd like, and that seemed like another good like kind of networking
Yeah.
place. So every week I just tried to put out another video of something new that I was working on, or like I think I did a video one time of like playing the Jungle Land saxophone solo from Bruce Springsteen, like just like weird things, like just to try it.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that was definitely a good use of time.
Absolutely. I loved your you posted today or yesterday an Almond Brothers track, Blue Sky. I'm a huge Almond Brothers fan, so I was like elated to see you do that. I was like, yeah, I knew I liked this guy. This is dope. Really
that
great.
was, I have great memories of being like in high school and finding the Eat a Peach album and just like listening to like Mountain Jam and just like being so zenned out and just thinking it was like the coolest thing. And that was actually like when I was in high school, a lot of the live shows that I would go to, most of them were like Government Mule
Mhm.
and Almond Brothers and people like that. Like I think I got to see the Almond Brothers like 4 times, which was really cool. And yeah, like that and like their roots are so deep in the blues too. Like that was really like I remember them doing I forget which album it was on, them doing like Trouble No More.
Mhm.
Um and thinking it was like I was like, oh my god, this is perfect for the harmonica. So I definitely stayed listening to the Allman Brothers for a long time. If we're ever on like a long road trip, I'm always putting on the Allman Brothers.
Me too, man. Absolutely. Like one of my top two bands of all time. And I'm always surprised, a little surprised. You know, they have a little harmonica occasionally on a track, occasionally. And I was always surprised that they didn't have more harmonica in that band.
Mm,
It just seemed
yeah,
like such a fitting thing for a really great harp player to be able to go toe to toe with, you know, Dickie Betts and Warren Haynes, you know, on those great guitar rides that they would take. You know, it just seemed perfect. But you know, maybe that's, you know,
yeah. I thought you were gonna say Derek Trucks, and then I
I
was gonna
love.
be like, I don't know any harmonica player who can follow him.
I mean, he's playing stuff that sounds like Indian. Would you call these raga or like raga? Is that what they call it? Like these little phrases, these little Indian things that he does. It feels like these microtones.
that
Ooh.
that Derek does.
Derek, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Man, like every guitarist that I talk to now will always put Derek Trucks on their list of like top five or
Mm.
even top three guitarists. And I remember like hearing him for the first time. It was him like doing like a guest appearance with Widespread Panic. And just like I was in like the third row and just being like washed with like Derek Truck's awesomeness.
yeah.
Um, and just thinking like I remember trying to break down like a lot of his licks like on the harmonica. But yeah, so he's
He's
amazing.
badass. He's badass. Yeah. So I'm interested. You mentioned learning how to practice, and I was wondering if maybe you could expound a little bit on some things that you've learned that have, you know, how to practice, because I think that's beneficial for a lot of people. I mean, I teach voice lessons, for instance, to some students, and you know, practicing is how do you impart them to how to be a great practicer. You know, because it's difficult. I think. I'm just interested to hear what you have to say about that.
So I mentioned Ronnie Chellis before.
Yeah.
So him and I have done like a lot of you know kind of lessons online, and you know he's just such a great teacher, and has done so much for the harmonica community. But the biggest thing that I took from him was this, you know, focusing on your weak points. It's you have to like expose those weak points before you can kind of progress.
Hmm.
So my biggest tips would be record yourself. That was actually part of the reason why I started putting these videos up online, is I just wanted like feedback.
Yeah.
Like I was never like into tongue blocking. So like I remember when I put up that Big Walter whatever video, I was like, so is this how you do this? Like is this what it's supposed to sound like?
Yeah.
So definitely videoing yourself, like super helpful. Um, you know, finding your bad habits is not, sorry, there's no such thing as a bad habit. Finding your habits,
Okay.
and just switching them like a little bit, because especially with the harmonica, it's really easy, like especially the diatonic, it's really easy to get into ruts. Like you'll think like, oh, like 4 or 5 warble works, so I'm just going to play it all the time, kind of
Right. Yeah.
idea.
Right. It sounds great. Let me play it again.
Yeah, or like two. Like my big thing was I would always like bounce off 2 draw to 1 draw. Like this is great. Like Alan Wilson from Grateful Dead from Can't Heat, like has these great licks that he does between the 1 hole and 2 hole. So I found myself, like when I would record myself, I was like, wait, I'm doing that a lot. Like it's coming up in all of these phrases. Or so record yourself, find your habits, get a really good teacher.
Mm-hmm.
That would be my third. Is I think so much of harmonica playing now is in, which is great, is in YouTube, and it's all around us. It's in books. But in a lot of other instruments, having that kind of mentorship, I think, is really important. And you always get better when you're with people who are better than you,
Right.
or getting advice from people who are better than you. Then I guess the last thing I would say is like, don't always practice what you're good at. Like a lot of like harmonica players think like practicing is just like it's just playing. It's just like and they'll do that for like hours. But the idea is to not do that, and switch it up, make it instead of just doing that, like try to hang on just the 2 draw. Like it doesn't have to be fancy. It can just be a simple rhythm exercise.
Mm-hmm. Get yourself out of your box, right?
Yeah, but that one about having a good teacher, I strongly believe in that, because there was a big difference in my playing from when I didn't have a teacher to when I started having teachers.
Mm-hmm.
Rob Paparosi is another. He's a great teacher of mine. He was. I went to a workshop with him. I think it was like 2 years ago in New Jersey. It was him and Steve Geiger were teaching, and it was just a day-long workshop, and I got so much out of it, like chromatic and diatonic. And Rob's one of those players. Like I always like the people who play chromatic and diatonic a lot, but like Rob's one of my heroes. But he taught me more in that day than I think I would have learned in like several months on YouTube.
Yeah, he's a fantastic player and a wonderful human being as well. Yeah, great guy. Well, so any, while you're waiting and you're sort of doing these YouTube videos and keeping up, your social networking up to date, which we all have to do these days, any plans to do a Shane Sager solo thing?
I'm thinking about it. A big interest of mine, especially I've really discovered this during quarantine, is I really love to teach. And I think that, I'm going to continue, obviously, when COVID is lessened and, things are a little bit more under control, go back on the road. And I'll probably stay on the road for a decent amount of time. Like if it's not with Sting, it's going to be with other artists.
Mm-hmm.
But, for me, like teaching is one of those things that I really am passionate about. I think that it, especially for this instrument, I think it's very important. And I think that would be my priority. Like, maybe there is a Shane Sager solo thing, but for me, like I really just want to, like I get so much out of this instrument, and to be able to share that with people,
Mm-hmm.
I think is just way more giving than to do like a kind of Shane Sager project.
Right. I love that. I love your spirit about that. It seems to have come. You know, we don't fall far from the tree. I'm from the country. We say stupid things like that.
Mhm.
But, you know, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and it seems like your parents are really those kinds of people as well, kind
Yeah.
of, you know, going out into the world and trying to make the world a better place. And that's in you as well. So that's kudos to your parents.
Yeah, they did a good job. Yeah, yeah. It's just, you know what it is, man. It's just like all these guys are my idols. Like all these, especially these people who teach harmonica too, like Adam and Jason and Ronnie and like but like what I was thinking, like my kind of direction would be like, there's not really a ton of people who do that for chromatic,
Hmm.
or people who do both. Um, so I think that would kind of be an interesting thing to do next is, you know, it doesn't have to be third position chromatic, but there's a lot of blues you can still play on the chromatic. That's my interest now is making the chromatic more a feature in blues outside of what it's been known for in the past.
Right. That's your angle. I love it. It's fantastic. Well, where can people catch up with you? I know you have on your Facebook page, your Instagram page. Do you have a website, Shane?
Working on it right now.
Nice. Okay. And that would be shanesager.com eventually.
Yeah. Um, yeah. You can all email me if you want. I can just give you my email and put it in the video description.
Yes, I will.
Yeah. And email me if you have any questions or you want to Zoom and just talk. I'm
Yeah,
here.
right on. Grab a lesson. Yeah. So, folks, he's teaching lessons. You heard it here. You can I'll put that in the show description as you mentioned when it's posted on the Harpslinger YouTube channel,
Mhm.
and then I'll also put it in the live stream feed.
Oh,
Man.
man.
Well, everybody, this is Shane Sager, and it is Chewy. Chewy is your nickname, right?
It's actually an interesting story. It's quick though.
Okay.
My sister and I have this thing that we do anytime. Like, so my sister in high school used to have these very tall brown boots, kind of reminiscent of like Han Solo. And I started like calling her Han, just out of the blue. And at that time, I had like kind of like crazy hair, and she started calling me Chewy. Now we have a thing that anytime like we're in a fight or like we disagree on something or we're mad at each other or whatever it is, I'll say Han, she'll say Chewy, and immediately whatever it is done. It's over with.
Wow.
She set up my Instagram page and I don't know how to change it, so that's why it's been Chewy for like whatever it is, like 5 years.
Right on. Yeah, I wasn't sure. I was like, well, does he go by Chewy? Because I noticed it was on your IG page, but not other places. And I'm like, well, I don't want to call him Chewy all day if that's like, not what everyone calls him.
if anyone if anyone knows how to change the name, please let me know because I've not been able to figure it out. Um, yeah, but my sister calls me Chewy, but I had a couple of guys in the band call me, and I was like, no, don't do
Don't-
that.
I'm so glad I didn't do that. Right on. Well, I'm so honored that you took the time to be here on the Harpslinger podcast, man. It's just really great to meet you, and I like you even more than I did before, just from watching you from afar on YouTube and stuff. So, yeah, I just see a great future on your horizon, and it's been a great pleasure to meet you, man. Good luck with everything.
You too, man. Thank you for doing this podcast, man. Really, all these all these people that you've been interviewing are all heroes of mine and peers of mine, and it's just really great. You're doing great things for this
Thank
community.
you. Mine too. Mine too. All right, man. Well, hey, peace and stay in touch. We got to do this again sometime. I'd love to do it again.
For sure.
Right on, man. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too.